I still remember the first time I walked into the Alameda County Superior Courthouse in Oakland, California as an employee. It was 1988, during the last summer of law school, and I, along with 9 others, had been offered a summer internship in the district attorney's office. I had a sense that I wanted to be a prosecutor, that I wanted to be on the front lines of criminal justice reform, and that I wanted to protect the vulnerable. But having never seen the job up close, I hadn't made up my mind. The sun shone brightly on the courthouse. The building stood apart on Lake Merritt, taller and more regal than the other buildings nearby. From certain angles, it looked like an architectural marvel from a foreign capital, with its granite base and concrete tower rising to meet a golden rooftop. Though from other angles, it bore an uncanny resemblance to an Art Deco wedding cake. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office is itself something of a legend. Earl Warren led the office before becoming Attorney General of California and later one of the most influential Chief Justices of the United States Supreme Court. He was on my mind that morning as I walked past the stunning mosaics in the lobby that depict the early history of California. Warren's words, proclaiming segregation inherently unequal, had taken a long 15 years to make it to Berkeley, California. I was grateful they had come in time for me. My elementary school class had been only the second class in my city to be desegregated through busing. I was the first to arrive at the orientation session. Within a few minutes, the rest of my fellow clerks showed up. There was only one woman among them, Amy Resner. As soon as the session was over, I went up to her and asked her for her phone number. In that male-dominated environment, it was refreshing to have at least one female colleague. She remains one of my closest friends today, and I'm godmother to her children. As summer interns, we understandably had very little power or influence. Our job was primarily to learn and observe, while assisting where we could. It was a chance to get a taste of how the criminal justice system worked from the inside, what it looked like when justice was served, and when it wasn't. We were placed with attorneys who were trying all kinds of cases from DUIs to homicides and had the chance to be in the room and part of the process of putting together a case. I'll never forget the time my supervisor was working on a case involving a drug bust. The police had arrested a number of individuals in the raid, including an innocent bystander. A woman who had been at the wrong place at the wrong time and had been swept up in the dragnet. I hadn't seen her. I didn't know who she was or what she looked like. I didn't even have any connection to her, except for the report I was reviewing. But there was something about her that caught my attention. It was late on a Friday afternoon, and most people had gone home for the weekend. In all likelihood, a judge wouldn't see her until Monday. That meant she'd have to spend the weekend in jail. Does she work weekends? Is she going to have to explain to her employer where she was? Is she going to get fired? Even more important, I knew she had young children at home. Do they know she's in jail? They must think she did something wrong. Who's taking care of them right now? Is there even someone who can? Child Protective Services might get called. My God, she could lose her kids. Everything was on the line for this woman. Her family, her livelihood, her standing in her community, her dignity, her liberty. And yet, she'd done nothing wrong. I rushed to the clerk of the court and asked to have the case called that very day. I begged, I pleaded. If the judge could just return to the bench for 5 minutes, we could get her released. All I could think about was her family and her frightened children. Finally, as the minutes in the day wound down, the judge agreed to return. I watched and listened as he reviewed her case, waiting for him to give the order. Then, with the pound of a gavel, just like that, she was free. She'd get to go home to her children in time for dinner. I never did get the chance to meet her, but I'll never forget her. It was a defining moment in my life. It was the crystallization of how, even on the margins of the criminal justice system, the stakes were extraordinarily high and intensely human. It was a realization that even with the limited authority of an intern, people who cared could do justice. It was revelatory, a moment that proved how much it mattered to have compassionate people working as prosecutors. Years before I would be elected to run a major prosecutor's office, this was one of the victories that mattered the most. I knew she was going home. And I knew the kind of work I wanted to do and who I wanted to serve.